it was the most relieving feeling when I quit, but it was also the scariest feeling because up until now, life had a plan. And on that first day where, I wasn't going into work, that was terrifying. And what was really scary was I I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what mattered to me. I didn't know what cared. I felt like my whole identity was wrapped in my advertising career, and I had nowhere to go from here.
You're listening to the Work in Progress podcast, and we are your hosts, Dana and Angela. We believe your work and career should evolve with you, and it is therefore always a work in progress. In this podcast, you will hear stories of people who turn their careers from something that no longer serves them into something that complements who they are and their life goals. The way I like to think about it is that their careers are growing and stretching just like they are. Our goal is to inspire you to get out there and to make the changes you want for yourself and your future self. Let's get started. All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the Work in Progress podcast. Today we're talking to Neha, and Neha has a very interesting career story. Neha switched from advertising to now a business owner. She is currently a career and energy coach. And these words individually make sense to me, but together they are new terms for me. I don't know, I'm not sure exactly what an energy coach is. That is so interesting, and that's why we're here today. We're here to learn about you, Neha, about your experience, your career change experience, and your story. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of introduction about yourself, and we'll take it from there to learn about your career change experience.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so inspired what the two of you are up to in this podcast. So, yeah, a little bit about myself. My name is Neha O'Rourke, and I live in Chicago. I am the founder and career and energy coach, like you mentioned, at Somewhere in Between Coaching, where I help women who are burnt out or unfulfilled design a career and life that they love. So that is my passion. And as you might have heard from my name as well, I am a multicultural individual. I'm a first generation Indian American, and I'm married to an Irish Italian. So culture and identity is also something that really interests me. And then what else? On the weekends, you can find me when we're allowed to walk around Chicago, do that and grab some iced coffees. And I love exploring the city.
Great. Yeah, I'm really interested in actually the just like the somewhere in between part. I was reading a little bit about it on your website the other day, and I'm really drawn to the part of you that's that kind of focuses on somewhere in between. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this notion of being somewhere in between is something that I have felt my entire life, right? I'm a multicultural individual. I've gone through career changes, and I always felt like I didn't fit in the box. And, it's funny when people ask me, Neha, what's your spirit animal? My answer is a platypus because I've always just been a hodgepodge of things. And, in this journey, I realized that actually most of us are somewhere in between. A lot of times when we can't fit into a box or, we're in between certain situations, we're labeled as confused, in crisis, or an outsider. And I really wanted to change that stigma because most of life is spent somewhere in between. We are constantly, working through life. And so life happens not in the moments where we reach the destination, but rather in those moments somewhere in between. Those moments are where we learn, where we grow, and where we really experience life's magic. So for me, somewhere in between relates to that specifically, helping people really enjoy the journey of life like enjoy the process of growth, enjoy the process of learning. And it also has to do with identity, right? Whether that be in your career, in your personal life, rather than trying to fit yourself in certain boxes. I love the idea of being able to be somewhere in between, curating that identity, curating that career, curating that personal life. And I think it's very empowering, and life becomes something that you enjoy versus something that you are surviving when you're allowed to thrive in that somewhere in between.
Absolutely. And by curating, what do you mean exactly?
Yeah. So, a lot of times there are traditional hard and fast definitions of whether we're talking about career or you're talking about your identity. So, for instance, many times we're taught that we have to do certain things in our career. Um, but what if we thought about it from the standpoint of first understanding what we need and curating the role to what we need? So, for instance, when you're applying to a job, having the conversation of maybe certain roles in there aren't serving you, or you can't serve the company in that. And so, what if you brought that conversation in the forefront of your interview process? How much better would that be, not only for your energy, but for the company, right? And that's the process of curation, um, leaving a little bit of room up for creativity. And same thing goes with identity, right? For instance, for me, I curate my identity as a first generation Indian American because I hold the values of Indian culture that have generosity, nonviolence, harmony. But for me, I also pick and choose the values of, independence, entrepreneurship, open-mindedness that the American culture holds. So that's my curation of identity. And we all have our own definitions of how we want to show up to life.
So tell me about your career changing experience. What were you were in advertising before, and what was your life back then?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I would love to say that my career change journey was just this beautiful experience. But the truth was that it stemmed from a place of a lot of hardship. So, to take a step back and to answer your question, my life in advertising was incredible. Back in the day, I went to school for journalism, specifically with an emphasis in strategic communications, which was the advertising PR track. And so, right out of even from being in college, I knew I wanted to go into advertising agencies and work in the client services and strategy sector. And so, I got into the agency, my dream agency that I wanted to work at. I worked on some of my most favorite clients, and got some really incredible opportunities. And so on paper, you would see that I was doing really well, rose from the ranks really quickly, brought in new business. And so from the outside looking in, it looked like I had everything in my career. But what you didn't know is I was breaking from death by a thousand cuts internally because I had adopted the mindset to take on everything. So I never said no. I was always available. I was always proving myself. I was always taking on the challenge with a yes can do attitude, which in the process of that, I lost myself, and I absolutely put myself on the back burner. And I would love to be able to tell you that I just woke up one day and had a breakdown, but I didn't. Throughout my career, I had little signs and nuances that showed me that, hey, something's not right here. My energy was trying to tell me something, right? The days that, I was just so exhausted, and it might have served me to just take a break versus just powering through, making times for meals versus just working through the lunch hour, going to bed versus answering the late night, early morning email, right? I had a lot of these signs, but I said, I just pushed them to the back. And so that snowballed, and I had a quite literal physical, mental, and emotional breakdown from stress, right? I hit the peak of burnout, and I was burnt to a crisp. and to the point where I had chunks of hair falling out. I wasn't sleeping at night. My body had, had the symptoms of severe burnout. And my fiance at the time, now husband, told me point blank, he said, Neha, this can't continue. You can't keep living like this. And, it was not an opportune time for me to quit my job. We were planning our multicultural wedding. Bills were a thing, right? And so I kind of, yeah, it was the most relieving feeling when I quit, but it was also the scariest feeling too, because up until now, life had a plan. And on that first day where, I wasn't going into work, that was terrifying. And what was really scary was I, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what mattered to me. I didn't know what cared. I felt like my whole identity was wrapped in my advertising career, and I had nowhere to go from here. But I had had so many experiences in life that taught me, life is too short to be doing things that aren't serving you, that you don't enjoy. And so I made it my mission from there, to figure out how do you design a career and life around the things that you love. And the first step in that understanding, what are the things that make you you? What is your purpose on this planet? And how can you fulfill that, both personally and professionally? So I spent over a year cracking that code. Lots of research went into that, trial and error, and I cracked it. And I was extremely excited. I realized I wanted to become a coach. And from there, got trained and started my company somewhere in between coaching, where I get to help women, both personally and professionally, thrive in their purpose and living a fulfilled life.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a really great story. But I want to dive in a little deeper. So, how long were you in your previous advertising career before you started to experience the burnout?
Yeah, I was in it for 4.5 years.
Yeah, that's a good solid chunk of time. And how long did that burnout period last for you? Was it like did you hit it pretty quick, or was it kind of a slow to start burnout and then it just kind of, you know, peaked really quickly?
Yeah, the interesting thing with burnout is the severity levels can vary, right? So, like I said, I had signals while I was working that something was in misalignment with my energetic needs, yet I suppressed that. So you could probably say the burn started slow in the beginning, and the more that I suppress, that snowballs and that becomes larger. So, I probably had been burnt out for maybe at least like severely for a year before I had to like have chunks of hair falling out to tell me, okay, maybe you should do something differently. Right. So, yeah.
I imagine that must be really horrifying scene to experience that. I talked to a lot of people who, had burnouts, but not a lot. I think a lot of people don't experience it that badly, or they probably did something, or they probably experienced burnout in different ways. What was it like back then? Uh, were your hours really, really long? And did you work on the weekends too?
Oh, yeah. They're like 12 to 15-hour days, working the weekends, and it was nonstop. The interesting thing about burnout and the conversation around burnout is, recently it's become more kosher to talk about it, but most people aren't sharing the fact that they're feeling burnt out. It's not something that for a long time was socially acceptable to talk about. And especially I think as women, we very often put a lot of pressure on ourselves. I've seen this with tons of my clients and different women that I do events with. We try to do it all, and we try to maintain it all. And, that's an unrealistic expectation to have of ourselves. And so, I'm so happy that the conversation about burnout is becoming more prevalent now, because, it is important to listen to your energy and do the things that serve you. And so everyone's experience may be different. And I hope to God that moving forward, we provide people with the tools so that they don't have to reach, whether it's my point level of burnout or someone else's level of burnout. You don't have to reach a point where it's so severe that you feel like you're breaking before you realize something needs to change. And that's part of my mission with Somewhere in Between. I don't want you to have to reach your breaking point before you realize that things need to change in your life.
And I think that's very powerful coming from someone who experienced that before firsthand. And I'm sure you know it very intimately. And I think that gives you a lot of credibility when it comes to helping people, preventing them reaching that burnout point. Um, Tell me, what was it like reaching the decision that you knew that you had to quit?
It was terrifying and something that I really did not want to do because in my mind, if I had to quit, that's where what I call in my coaching experience gremlin messages, right? I had these messages in my head of like, oh my gosh, if I quit, I'm a failure. Or, what will people think when I quit? Or, you know, where am I going to go from here? Like, so many fears came in the way of that. But, like I said, I had gotten to such a severe point that I knew deep down inside I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. And so, um, the idea of relief on the other end was what ultimately made me pull the trigger. But it was not an easy decision for my ego by any means.
Did you have to think about the finances, or was it too painful that you just decided, I'm just gonna quit and figure it out?
For me at that point, it was I'm going to quit and figure it out. And so, it was not, again, not an easy decision. We were planning a
Right.
multicultural
That's
wedding. So,
expensive.
not only, yeah, exactly. And so, I was very grateful to have support from my fiance at that time. But, I also I was in my time off, I was marketing consulting because bills are a thing. And doing things otherwise. But yeah, I mean, there's many women who have the journey where they have enough self-awareness and lead time to say, you know what, I know I need to take some time off, and they start saving. I wish I was had more self-awareness at that time, and prioritize myself to kind of have some foresight to see, okay, I want to do this. Mine really came from a place of crisis, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that that also just goes to show how burnt out you were. And I think that most people can manage, to, if necessary, to take up a side job or to do something else for a while, and to, that will be a good break actually from what was stressing you out before as well. So I'm so sorry to hear that.
No, and I'm a firm believer that every experience happens for a reason. And so I'm actually extremely grateful for that.
How long were you in that, I guess, somewhere in between stage? How long did that take you between, quitting and then finding that you wanted to become a coach and starting your own business?
So that process for me lasted over a year. And I was extremely intentional and thorough in the ways that I was researching and understanding and attending seminars to really take an in-depth look on how do you understand what your purpose is, and what are the things that we as human beings need to have in our lives to be happy, both personally and professionally. I actually hate the term work-life balance because it's a total a representation that's unfair, because it isn't a one-to-one ratio. And so for me, it was, how can you get ahead of that? How do you get to a point where you don't have to balance, but your life is made for you both personally and professionally? So, that took a lot of work and time and research. So, your personal life isn't an afterthought, but it's baked into the design as much as the professional goals, so that your career is something that is both personally and professionally fulfilling and sustainable. And so, I took a lot of time to figure that out. And once I cracked that code, what's really cool is, it took me over a year to figure that out for myself. But the program that I use with my clients now to get the same exact results from all the research and information that I kind of distilled down, now I am able to take clients through that in a 12-week journey. So it's been really cool to see how, I needed to go through that longer period of time, really do my due diligence. And from that experience, from being trained as a coach and through my experience with my clients, I've refined that. And so now the benefit in working with me to figure out, hey, how do I design my career and life around the things that I love? You don't have to spend over a year of your life. You can have the exact inputs and get it very efficiently within that 12-week process. And that's something that's really exciting to not only me, but my clients.
That's amazing. Tell me more about it. What goes on in these 12-week sessions? What are they like?
When I work with my clients, it's really important to me that we move at the cadence that they're wanting to move at. So I have some clients who were extremely burnt out, like I was, and so we pace at once a week for the 12 weeks. Whereas, I have other clients who tell me they're so excited and they're like, Neha, we wanted to figure this out yesterday. And so we'll move quicker and we'll meet multiple times a week. It's really up to how quickly or slowly the client wants to move. But, counterintuitively, we work together over the phone versus in person or on video chat because I've learned that when you don't have someone's face in front of you, you are able to more freely speak without making judgments or assumptions, which allows us to get to the root of the issues quicker. So I do the coaching via the phone. And so how that program works is, first, like I had mentioned, we talk about the things that make us us. No one in your life has likely asked you, hey, Dana, what matters for you at the end of the day? What is the meaning of your life? What impact do you want to have, here on this earth? Right? What are your North Stars? So we spend so much life understanding all of the external factors, and we don't really know the internal. Most of us have a self-awareness of, I hold certain values or I like certain things, but we haven't really dug into those key indicators of what's going to lead to our fulfillment. So, we do a deep dive on the internal portion, and then we do the external. So the design portion, and the design portion relates to both personal and professional. And so we'll get into certain elements that are key to designing a career and life that they love. And so at the output of the program, my clients have a clear blueprint of exactly what they need to be doing both personally and professionally in order to achieve their goals and to feel that peace and happiness and fulfillment in all aspects of their lives.
I see. So it's not just about the professional side of things, it's also about the personal side of things as well.
Absolutely. I tell people, when you come to me for coaching, if you want to talk about your career, I'm happy to help you to design that career. But if you only want to talk about career, I'm not the person for you, because to me, it's so important to take in your personal goals and needs into account, because you're not one person at work and one person at home. You're one person. And so, like I'd mentioned earlier, your personal goals need to be baked into your career goals.
I see. That is so interesting, and I think I don't hear that a lot, honestly. When I talk to coaches, especially career coaches, I mean, obviously they're career coaches, so they focus on careers. But I think I couldn't agree with you more that it's not just about career or just about personal, because you are made 24 hours a day is divided into both career and personal. So it's very important that you take care of both. Um, and tell me about the energy part.
Energy is so interesting. So, the word energy has so many different meanings. You could think of it from anything from Reiki healing to, you could think about it from physics. And so what I mean by energy is understanding how your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions drive your your life. And so when I talk about being an energy coach, that's about understanding, getting in tune with your own signals internally, right? Those thoughts, those emotions, those feelings, to understand what you need. Because in coaching, the philosophy is that you are the expert on your life. So when you engage with a coach, they will never tell you what to do, because that takes the expertise out of you and into the coach's hands. And so we never want to do that. And so by understanding your energy, you're able to kind of pull the answers out of yourself, right? So for instance, when we're feeling kind of tired or uninspired, we generally associate that with like a negative connotation, right? Something's going bad. But the really important thing to understand about your energy and your feelings and your thoughts and your emotions is those things are neither good nor bad. They just are. They're just signals from your body trying to inform you of something. So you can think of it like this: a stoplight, if you have the red light's not bad. It's just telling you to stop. The red light's bad if you wanted to be somewhere 20 minutes before and you're sitting at the red light, right? It's when we're associating it to the outcome. And so I love, help energy coaching, because it gives us the tools to understand our own answers, our own needs, our own desires, so that we can move throughout life with so much more ease.
Wow, this is completely new to me, but this is actually quite intuitive when you explain it, or the way you explain it. So if somebody is listening to this and they're experiencing some stress or anxiety or burnout even from work, how do you think they can kind of use this principle to help them decide, help them assess what's actually causing the stress, if let's say they don't know what's causing their stress yet?
That's a great question. So the first thing I would tell them is to allow themselves to feel the feeling, but don't live there. So we're not going to judge what you're feeling. You are allowed and very much validated in the feeling that you're feeling, right? There's a reason that you're feeling what you're feeling. So a lot of times when we're stressed or we're burned out or we're anxious, we try to be like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. But here again, it's just a signal from your body. So first, allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. When you're strong enough, then ask yourself, where might this feeling be coming from? So you can look at what's going on in your life and ask yourself, where are the energy sucks or drains in my life? When I'm doing something, am I doing it because I feel like I have to, I should, I must? Or am I feeling like I'm doing it because I want to, right? That right there, doing something because you want to versus doing something because you feel like you're obligated to, there's a heavier energy associated with the obligation, right? And so that's when we're doing things that are in misalignment with the things we want to do. That's where we can start getting some indicators on, where is this stress coming from? Where is this burnout coming from? So that's a way to identify where that might be starting.
Tell me about coaching. How did you decide on coaching? What was it about the seminars and the research that you were doing help you decide that this is what you want to do?
That's a great question. So, what's really funny is I have always known that I wanted to do coaching. I just didn't know it was an industry. So what I mean by that is when when I was managing people in my advertising career, I would look at the way that companies have managers, or how you're supposed to kind of train someone. And I would always think, gosh, each person has something really incredible to contribute. I believe that we're all smart. We all have strengths. We all have something really valuable to contribute. But in many settings, we are not given the tools to flourish in the way that we need to. So as a manager, I would always want to say, how can we build on your strengths? How can we support you in a way versus having someone else's agenda here? How can we support you? Because, when a human being is supported in their fullest capability and given that safe space, they will flourish. And so that was something that was always in the back of my mind. And I knew that I started asking myself, maybe is it therapy that I want to do? Is it counseling that I wanted to do? And I realized it wasn't so much about where, therapy will look at your past and dig into why does this happen? What's associated with that? While those are absolutely important practices, my kind of energy lied more into how do we understand the things that are getting in your way, and how do we remove them to help you move forward? And that's exactly what coaching does. And so, through the programs that I take my clients through, I actually took myself through that, and that's how I figured it out. So that was a really fun exploration for me and journey. And that aha moment was like the most epic moment ever. And I hear my clients, when they hit that moment, it's been described as euphoria, ecstasy. It's been described as kind of finally feeling awake. It's like something clicks and you realize that you can get paid for your life purpose. And I think that's a pretty cool moment.
Tell me about your like the first couple of weeks or months when you first started working as a career or a life coach. What were they like, and how did you find your first clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, um, I definitely want to share the part of before I launched because I think that's really important. So, for 3 months prior to me launching, I had everything ready to go. I had my business registered. I had my name. I knew my programs. I had everything set. Like I could have pressed go 3 months prior. And for 3 months, I was absolutely just panicking in my own spin. I thought, oh my God, I've been in advertising. I went to school for that. Now I'm about to change. I've never done this before. What are people going to think? Like I could just picture people, my old coworkers, friends and family being like, "What are you doing?" Or "Who does she think she is?" Right? I could hear that chatter in there, and that was really scary because this was a really vulnerable moment. I'm going to totally change what I'm up to, pursue something that is me to my absolute core, and then I'm going to announce it and try to build a business off of it. That's really vulnerable. And so I let my fear stop me for 3 months in starting. That's 3 months that I could have been making money, living in my purpose, learning something, and I let fear stop me. And you know, finally, on the day that I decided to press go, um, I just said, screw it. Like I can't let other people's opinions stop me from doing what I love and what I want to, because ultimately I want to help people, and letting their opinions will stop me from supporting someone else in their growth, their movement, and their fulfillment. So I was very fortunate that, on the day that I launched, I actually received multiple clients on my first day of launch. And yeah, what was interesting was, um, prior to me pressing launch, I actually had started cultivating a community through Instagram, through my friends and family, going to events and different networking places, so that when I launched my business, I had an audience that knew me and trusted me. And I think that's a really exciting way in for people who are interested in starting a business. Is how can you start with a community already cultivated, so that day one when you launch, you're not just then trying to find people who will want your services. And so what was really cool is, on day one, the people who um, started with me weren't any of my, like, I didn't, they weren't friends and family. They were strangers who had gotten to know me on the internet. Right. And so that's as creepy as that sounds. That's pretty powerful that someone who doesn't know you, is willing to trust, buy in, and put their goals and life in your hands is pretty
Yeah,
incredible.
that's incredible, and that's what a good way to launch. I feel like sometimes people launch and then they kind of wait, and then there's a lull, and it doesn't go right away. But it's not like that for you, and that's I'm very happy for that. Um, what are the networking events and the community that you are building? Tell me tell me more about that. How did you manage to do that?
While I was in that, over a year of researching and figuring out, kind of cracking this code, I started somewhere in between as a blog where I blogged about women who had had career transitions, women who had made changes. I also blogged about multicultural topics. That's very important to me and still a part of my company today. But I had started just talking about the things that mattered to me, the things that were in my philosophy, things I wanted to learn about from others. Um, I didn't have all the answers, so I was, listening to other people's experiences, hearing other people out. We all have something really incredible that we can contribute, and so I wanted to showcase other people's journeys and also cultivate community for this type of conversation because, like I had mentioned, it wasn't really a space that people were talking about. It was kind of those more vulnerable subjects. So I wanted to shine a really bright spotlight on the fact that, we're not alone in this. There's resources out there. We all have felt somewhere in between. And so for me, it was starting that community through my blog, through Instagram, sharing these things. What I think also caught people's attention is in a time where LinkedIn was used to just share your wins, I was sharing my losses on LinkedIn, which which was counterintuitive, and I think that gives other people permission to share theirs as well. So that was how I started cultivating community. And I'm based in Chicago, which is really an incredible place for entrepreneurs, creators, anyone who has an idea and wants to run with it. The community here is so welcoming and is something that I'm very grateful that I had in my journey to starting my business and even beyond.
And so the blog that you were mentioning is still on your website today, right? That's where you keep your entries.
Yeah, and to be honest, I've done such a terrible job with maintaining it. So it used to be my whole website used to be a blog, and I kept up with it much more. And so now the blog is one lever of my business, but I also have other avenues that I share my message and thought leadership, and so that's one way in, whereas that used to be the singular way in.
Got it. Okay. And what are these some other avenues, like Facebook groups or something?
Yeah, so I'm very active with my Instagram community. I love that platform from the capability of stories where you get to see people's everyday, where to the feed where you can have more thought out conversations. And I love the, as creepy as sliding to someone's DM sounds. I've had really great relationships, whether that be the client relationships, friendships, partners, people I've been inspired by. I think people are a lot more accessible through social media now than they have ever been. And I think it can feel scary or daunting or creepy sometimes if you're reaching out to someone, but remembering, like, it's just a conversation just as much as you would ask someone to grab coffee with you. Same thing goes via social media. So I love to use Instagram, LinkedIn. I do a lot of workshops and partner with other brands and companies and to do workshops and events. So I love that what used to be in person and now virtual component of kind of getting to know other people and other communities.
You were mentioning that when you were launching, you were really afraid of what your coworkers or friends would think. What was it like breaking the news to them? Or did you keep close contact with them after you left? Is that why you're nervous? Or is it just because they're going to hear about you starting this completely new career and you feel like you would be judged?
It was all the above, right? It was the friends and family that I knew. It was the people, I love the people that I work with. I was very fortunate to work with some brilliant people. And so I have nothing but respect for my coworkers and friends that I worked with in advertising. But it was the fear of judgment. It was the fear of failure, right? What if I start this whole thing and it fails? And so what I had to reframe was, what is failure? Failure to me was continuing to live a life that wasn't in alignment with what I needed due to other people's opinions, right? If I would have just kept on doing what I was doing because I was scared of other people's opinions versus doing something that felt scary and vulnerable, but that was in alignment with my purpose and what I needed out of life, because guess what? No one else is living my life but me. And so I need to be okay with that, right? And so what's really funny is it's come really full circle. There were people who were supportive. There was absolutely conversations that happened, and there were people who judged, and there will always be people who judge, and there will always be people who criticize. And remembering that other people's reactions have nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. And I think that perspective is really important. We tend to make other people's judgments or opinions about ourselves, and people's reactions are based on their own perspective, their own experience, and sometimes out of a place of their own lack. And so what's been really cool to see is my old coworkers, my friends or family, more than not, have been extremely supportive. And even so, where some have now become clients. So total full circle, but just knowing that you're not going to be, for me, a big thing to learn was, I'm not going to be able to please everyone. And the most important person to please is myself.
That's absolutely true. And I think it's brilliant how you reframe failure. I think to me, that's a really new idea, to kind of look at it differently. And it's absolutely true that if you are the one that's stuck doing something you don't like, that's more of a failure than to start something, venture out, start something new and see what happens, right? I think that's a very, very good point to bring up. And I really, really love that. So I think that might be all my questions. The last one I wanted to ask you is, where can people find you online?
You can find me via my website. It's SIB as in boy, careercoaching.com. I actually offer free consultations. So we can jump on the phone for 30 minutes and talk about what your goals are, and give you some direction, whether that be working with me or giving you the tools to do it yourself, whatever that is. I'm there to support you. So you can get that via my website. And I'm also active on social media. So across most platforms, my handle is somewhere in between coach. And I'm probably most active on Instagram. And I also have a LinkedIn page. You can follow me somewhere in between coaching.
All right. Thank you so much. Actually, I had one more. I forgot. Usually this is the question that I like to ask people. It's kind of a fun thought exercise. But so you were in advertising before, and now you're a career and life coach or energy coach. You've now started your own business. What do you think your career could look like in the next 5 or 10 years?
That's a great question.
Would you be doing something different, or you'd be doing something the same, but with slight changes? What would that look like for you?
Yeah, no, I love that question. So for me, I would absolutely, the fundamental would be same. I am absolutely in my purpose right now, doing what fulfills me, and I know that this is my life's work. So I would absolutely continue to do what I'm doing. But for me, and this is especially not only for myself, but the coaching that I do with my clients, is understanding what matters to you in life and where you want to go. So for me, it's really important that for me that I have a family one day. And so I'm actually building towards a business model that will allow me to be present in the ways that I want to, both in my family and in my business. So building towards that model will look like different services, different ways to engage with me. So working towards that, as that's my ultimate design, right? That when we talk about career and life that you love. And so I love kind of being able to look forward and see that. But I'm sure, I'm going to learn a lot along the way and learn and grow. So I'll be excited to see where things go in 5 years from now. But I think the really important thing here that I want to share is success to me doesn't look like, I'm not trying to be the next Rachel Hollis or Tony Robbins, right? Success to me is being able to be present with my family and my business. And so on that note, it's really important for me to share the message that success looks different for everyone, and making sure that you're working towards your own version of success.
I guess I'm just curious, has this pandemic affected your business at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Does it bring you more clients?
Yeah, it's a mix of both, right? It's more clients, but also there's also been times where people were wanting to move forward at the beginning of this pandemic, and the news about the economy has stopped people as well too. So it's totally about the mindset. There are some people right now who are living in such fear that it's hard to move forward, and there's other people who are viewing this time as something that they want to really dig in internally, and so they're gung-ho. And so it really depends on people's mindset, but I would be absolutely lying if I said this pandemic has not affected my business. And due to the circumstances we're in, I'm actually pivoting some of my services. I've had a lot of in-person components, and since we can't have that, as a business owner, having to kind of quickly move and be agile in serving my community and serving my clients in the way that's best for them in this moment in time has been important.
I see. Okay. Well, Neha, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for sharing all your experiences and your stories, and I really love your wisdom and just your energy. Thank you so much for bringing a different perspective to me, and I'm sure to my audience. So, thanks so much, and we will be in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You just finished listening to an episode of the Work in Progress podcast. If you like this episode, make sure you share this with someone who can benefit from it and leave us a review on iTunes. Don't forget to let us know what you think or if you have any questions. You can find our contact information in the episode description. Keep doing the good work, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.